I'm actually honored and delighted to be part of this entire amazing movement on design which is happening in our country. It has surely brought the limelight across the world to design in India. And a big shout out to Indi, Sudhir, and the entire team. Can we have a big round of applause for them? You guys rock. You guys are awesome. So today with me are, I don't want to use that word, but some bright young people who are, knocking the doors and willing to change the design scene in the country. That doesn't make me sound old, but yes, we are young at heart. So on my right, on your left, is Pankti. Welcome, Pankti. Pankti, I got to know, is very much our local lady. She hails from Ahmedabad, and she went on to do her master's from MS University. And please watch out for her because she started her own studio called D Icebreaker. Did I pronounce it correctly? D Day, whatever. English is a foreign language for us. Just before the pandemic in 2019. So we're really looking forward to her experiences of how she sort of sailed through. Her studio or her agency works with many iconic brands. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this progressive glasses and the font size. So she worked with various clients, some homegrown brands like Wagh Bakri Tea, to Yum, Edelweiss, ZTV, Balaji Wafers, Bicano. So next time you go into a mall and you pick up a product, make sure you remember her and her team. On my left is Kunal. Hi, Kunal. Kunal is an award-winning industrial designer and brand practitioner. And I think that's the most amazing and beautiful part of being a designer is that you get amazing opportunities to reinvent yourself. In the morning, I was having a word with him. He trained as a product/industrial designer, but now he's doing amazing work in the space of brand strategy, etc., etc., etc. No? He has led projects for diverse companies such as McCain Foods. We all know the Smileys. Yep. Reliance Retail, Rocha Pharmaceuticals, and many more. He founded ABND. Look up on the net to find out the full form of what ABND stands for. About 12 years ago. And during the pandemic, between the lockdowns, somewhere in between that, he founded another company called Edunoia, which is a brand consulting company providing services to the educational sector. And soon after that, in 2021, he co-founded Signoia, an experience design company. And on my far left is Tarun. Yeah, there are two Taruns here, so why walk when you can run? So both of us will make sure that we run. So Tarun is the business head at IndiDesign. Don't worry, I'll not ask you for in-house stories and secrets. And has been a part of the company since its inception. An MBA by qualification. Tarun, this says he acts as a gatekeeper between the client and the design team. I'm really curious, what does it mean, gatekeeper? But I'm sure it's like a multi-plug which helps make connections between the design team and the client and all kinds of layers in between. Oh. He plans businesses and project processes, allocates resources and maintains profitably at IndiDesign. While delivering excellence to customers, he is also one of the key organizers for the Design India show. Amazing. So now, we've all looked at behind the scene people, and here is one of them in front of the scene, in front of the camera. Welcome all three of you guys. So I know the last 2 years, 3 years, or even a couple of years before that have been quite interesting, challenging, but then with challenges comes a lot of other doors and windows which slowly start opening up, which we had not seen or noticed earlier. It's a fact, and that as designers, we are time travelers. We often engage in what we are doing today. We are creating something for the future, which maybe the client has vaguely imagined, and we have imagined and visualized and strategized it with a little more clarity. But the customer or the consumer is actually not prepared for what they would be sort of offered maybe 6 months down the line. Yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah, please. Is she here? Yeah. Okay. Reena from the Big Brand Theory. TBT. Please welcome her on the stage. She's a wild card entry. Hi, Reena. Welcome. I'm sorry, Sudhir just caught me unawares. I would like you to sit there. I don't want to play the scales with men and women on either sides. Thank you so much. I would request you to please introduce yourself briefly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tarun. I'm sorry I had to interrupt you. You were going really well. So I'm Reena, the managing partner of Big Brand Theory. We are a very recent 5-year-old organization, strategic brand custodians, and then we'll hear a lot more as you go on. I wouldn't take your time.
I'm sorry, I missed that part.
So I'm saying we're from Big Brand Theory, managing partner of Big Brand Theory, which is a recent 5-year-old design studio, strategic brand custodians. So that's us. And we could carry on the introduction.
Amazing. So please join me in welcoming these young guns and perhaps the future of design. 5 years, 4 years, 12 years, and things like that. And I am very, very hopeful and excited about the future of this profession, not only in our country and the world. So we were talking about futures and how designers travel, are time travelers. It's an open-ended question. Any one of you guys can, please pardon my metaphors because I'm basically a academician at heart and in practice. So any one of you guys can raise not your hand but your mic and answer this question. When we look at the last 2-3 years, could you just name one most significant change in the methodology of your working or your interactions within the studio or perhaps your interactions with the client? The most significant thing.
I think, as we all know, we all were doing only one thing on the mic, like, hello, Shweta, your mic is on. Shweta, your mic is on. So that kind of changes is there in last 2-3 years and in the way we function. Of course, digitalization has moved, has pushed us to, evolve on the technology as well, and the fundamentally that we work. We as designer function in a group. We like to, create a mess and then clarify it and find our way out of it and things like that. So yeah, that's.
So you're basically saying the kind of interactions which we had have changed.
Yes.
Radically. Thank you for that.
I think the one thing that we live, I think as designers,
one thing.
Yeah,
because
one
I
thing.
have a lot of cue cards.
The one thing we live in a bubble that good design is good business. I think that definition for me changed during the pandemic because I think it's not good design that is good business. Good business is good business.
Good business is good business.
And there are a lot of things. Design serves a purpose. And similarly, there are a lot of things that build a good business. I think that learning was more important during the pandemic. You do not take anything for granted. You don't take people, you don't take your organization, and you don't take business for granted.
You don't take anything for granted. That is a hashtag for this panel.
I just have one little thing to add. I think one thing that has been more important than anything else is that trust factor. I think that trust and integrity came to the forefront the moment people went home, the moment they were at their leisure, but they were performing at their best. So I think that trust factor is what is the most changing factor, and we as businesses had to come in terms with that. We had to start trusting people to do the right thing. I think that's the most critical part for us to do.
The trust.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
And for once, if you ask the one thing that has really influenced the way we work and are, is the fact that design has just become a part of the package. What we are expected to be our business strategists. Our clients expect us to sit across the table, understand their business problems and their solutions, and then probably look back at design and deliver it that way. So I think that is one very fundamental change that we feel we've gone through.
So is it something similar to what we say that, from shifting from working for the client to working with the client?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So we've been hearing a lot of these things about the new norm and, how bumping into another colleague, uh, maybe near the washroom, maybe during lunch, maybe during other breaks, and, just overlooking the shoulder and say, "Kya kar raha hai yaar? Mujhe bhi batao," Now, that kind of a serendipitous interaction sort of got limited to the 9 frames on the screen, whether it is Zoom or Google Meet or whatever. No? How did you guys, as a studio, with maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 people, how did you guys look at that in terms of ensuring that the team is still together? Maybe you could start with that.
I think we don't put any effort on that because we were already doing it. It was never a scenario that we got to know that at what time people are cooking what or washing clothes or doing small things at their home. We came more closer and we got a glance of a look how everybody is at home also functioning. So I think that brought us more closer in terms of working in the team. So we didn't had to put lot of effort in, how we gonna function again after this whole scenario online.
I'm very bad with these handheld mics. But thank you, Pankti. We've been also talking about that, design drives change. And here we were looking at that the designers and the design studios were also compelled to reflect and change some of the ways they were doing things or even what they were doing. And I will not go down the beaten path of whether the change was incremental or radical and how much we were pushing the boundaries, moving out of the comfort zone. We all have gone through that, right? My specific question is about how in the last 2-3 years our relationship with technology or the way we use, abuse, interact with tech, how do you think that changed, there has always been a certain divide amongst the designers and the non-designers even within the family. अच्छा Figma, हम तो InDesign use करते हैं या हम तो X Adobe whatever, I don't want to get into those details. So this is my presumption that the life of a simple humble designer who's also trying to struggle with so many things moved beyond just the design softwares. Maybe if you could share something about how were you using tech to keep in touch, to keep records? Was it a Slack? Was it a Discord? Was it something else? WhatsApp, phone calls, whatever. Because people were also dealing with a lot of other things which were happening at home. Other people also had to be taken care of, things like that. Maybe you could answer this question.
So, from the point of view of our tryst with technology, couple of things. Trello and WhatsApp have been the two key communicator perspective. When it comes to it being intimidating, yes, we always hesitate in trying new softwares. But the fact is that there has been a good adoption. And what really helps is a younger generation of designers coming in who are open to experimenting across. And from a third perspective, how did we kind of connect over these times is because as a setup, we are a very lean setup. So it's easier to communicate, know what's going on the other side, and adjust things and also have that kind of an equity with the client. So this has been the overall way that we've kind of dealt with those 2-3 years.
So are you saying that adaptability sort of rose up
Yes.
the hierarchy of qualities which are desired from
Yes, adaptability.
adaptability and also then having a little patience कि चलो ठीक है आज नहीं हो पा रहा है हम शाम को फिर से करेंगे.
Yes. So it's always a balance between the timeline has been yesterday to the balance state. The timeline can be adjusted. It's always been that kind of a balance.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Kunal, we were also talking about this, that how one was sort of presented with several opportunities in these adverse times. And we all know that we have two kinds of clients. One client is perhaps the family-owned businesses and who have a certain old, new, whatever, they have a certain way of thinking and they hold certain things closer to their chest. And there's another group of client which could be the second, third generation who've studied abroad, who are well updated with what's happening in the world and they are sort of more tech savvy. So during this time or after the COVID, if you could share some experiences of uh, how the relationships between your studio and the clients also changed. Like we were also having a conversation that some clients always insisted कि नहीं face to face meeting करो, presentation के लिए आओ. So that meant a whole lot of presentations, printouts, travel time, hotel booking, other logistics, and then suddenly things started changing. You could throw some light on how the interactions with the clients got realigned.
I think, I mean, we are based in Andheri in Mumbai, and if you know, the joke is that when you go from Andheri West to Andheri East, that itself is a nightmare. And now it's worse with some of the road construction going on, right? Now the thing is, post-pandemic, the good thing that happened is your clients are more sensitive. So even a client who's 2 kilometers away, and if it's a minuscule meeting or if it's a not so important meeting, they were open to the idea of doing it online. So I think the number of meetings got reduced. And I think I'm assuming everybody who's a business owner would agree that meetings are the biggest time consumer, and I mean they dip on efficiency and cost effectivity. I think that was one of the biggest the positives. But at the same time, I think on the other side of things, it allowed us as business owners to look at opportunity in adversity. And we were actively now looking at clients, building opportunities for clients, working with the clients, like she pointed out, right? Where we were able to look at opportunities that clients had from a market point of view too, with manufacturing picking up, with pharma picking up. There were so many opportunities that existed for us as designers, us as business owners. Because at the end of the day, we had to, maybe you are profitable or not is secondary, but we had to keep that boat sailing. You had to make sure that you're not laying off any people, you're not giving any, cutting any salary, and you're making sure your salary is on time, right? So that forced us to look at opportunities from that point of view. That helped us build better relationship with our clients too. Because now we were proactively thinking as opposed to waiting for a brief sort of thing.
That is a very, very interesting thing. But that was the studio and the client. Pankti, if you could just touch a little upon how the same relationships changed within, like we were talking about both the things. When we onboard new talent, oftentimes pre-COVID, the young person is in the studio physically. There's a certain non-verbal communication and interaction also which is happening. And did you onboard new talent during this pandemic?
So yes, we did, and I tell you one incident in that case. We onboarded one talent. She was very fresh talent in the market, and she just did her graduation from Ahmedabad itself. And then we explained her the process. We told her to do things in a particular manner, step by step things and everything. And then when we told her to explain that what she's doing and how she's processing it at home, so she was not from India, she was from Sri Lanka. So all we can hear on the call was, then I do this, then I do this, then I do that, then I do that. So it was really messy, I'll say, and it was difficult to explain that whether this is right or not, or whether to groom her in a right manner. It was really, really, really difficult. But I think after some times, it is something that the new talent needs to be proactive, right? So whenever we hire somebody or we add on new talent into the palette, then we only look for people needs to be curious and people needs to be proactive about anything, not only perspective of their portfolio or a design or anything. They need to be curious to know, learn, and hustle for really what they want to do in their life. So then they grasp
Faster.
yeah. So that's how we.
But we were also talking about that how this work from home thing perhaps was a blessing in disguise. So imagine a scenario where there is talent, but they are caught up with some other priorities in their lives. Could be parenting, could be taking care of their elders. But this work from home sort of allowed them to get on board.
Yeah, I was so happy. I was so happy when I initially started the studio in 2019. One of my best colleague, friend, kind of a person left us just because of her conceiving situation or baby situation, and then we were so sad about it. But then this COVID really gave her chance to cope up with the career thing, and it was so quick. So it is not easy before COVID, I'll say, to cope up when you are on a break. But yeah, so, and on the other side, I think when men and women are, really talking about equality and working and things like that on the situation, but it was really easy. I was seeing things, getting balanced just because this pandemic and at home also, when only two people are working in the scenario.
Empathy quotient went up.
Yeah.
That was what I was, leading to my second question, that often when we work in a studio setup, we, of course, and all of you guys must have been doing that, when we look at timelines and deadlines and plan the project, कि भाई Thursday रात तक ये हो जाना चाहिए and things like that. And I'll come to a very specific thing, and I'm sure all of us have memories related to it. I don't want to, rekindle those memories, but some of the lockdowns were very, very tough, and many of our colleagues went through very, very challenging times, either with themselves or within their families. How did that work within your studios? One, as you said, is empathy and watching each other's back. कि ठीक है, you don't worry, I'll double up and finish your work also. But how did the clients also respond to those timelines, which were so unpredictable, perhaps at that point of time?
I think by that time, I think by April, May, I think everybody was sensitized, right? Because we were all practically living in each other's bedrooms, living rooms, dining rooms, and you know for a fact that if somebody's not switching on their camera, then there is a very strong reason for it, right? So I think the empathy quotient going up was not just within teams. I think it was also between the client and us. Also, it's the other way around, right? Too, right? That the clients required certain things to be done, especially with certain sectors picking up. Clients required certain things to be done, which may not be possible on a work from home scenarios, but agencies have supported them. So I think overall, I think relationships in totality have become better, and I think this was a learning experience, not just for design as a fraternity, but humankind on the whole, right? So I think that's the one thing that it brought to the table.
Yes, Tarun.
I think the relationships were
His mic isn't working.
Sorry, I think the relationships were put on test actually, whether it was employer-employee or whether it was clients and agencies. You had to make way for each other. So I had this personal experience where my own designer, my senior designer, was the first to get hit by COVID, and we had to write a sorry message to the client saying that, boss, we really cannot do anything, and getting appreciated and giving us that space, and I think giving us that time to get back, and we bounce back, and that trust that is there, I think that's immense, and that's where the trust is being tested, and I think that is what came to the forefront.
Amazing. I think we would all agree to this if I say that, while earlier the relationships were more professional and people were restricted to a certain kind of interaction or transaction, and we were wearing a different kind of mask. But the masks which the COVID brought out also influenced and opened up the way we accepted and understood the kind of behind the scenes challenges which my client or which my design team or even which my staff must be facing. I was just wondering that in any kind of studio or setup, when we largely moved to the work from home thing, designers could still keep themselves meaningfully occupied and retain their jobs. But perhaps it was the support staff of the drivers and the guy who used to take care of the kitchen and all, that might have taken a hit. It's a micro question, but how did you guys deal with that? Because वो तो ऑफिस में किसी के लिए चाय नहीं बना रहा था.
सब खुद ही चाय बना रहे थे, बर्तन मांज रहे थे, वही करना था, right? I mean, that is exactly what has happened.
So did you guys manage to, sustain
Yeah,
him or
we
her?
retained, sustained,
did.
and the idea was that we're going to go back someday, right? So it's not leaving anybody behind in the journey just because you're going through a tryst for a while.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think I'm getting hints, but there is this very interesting model which I was reading up on. It's called the VUCA model, VUCA, which sort of stated that the future, in any case, whichever way we have imagined, is going to be volatile, uncertain, confusing, and ambiguous. Now, there are several references to these models, which is saying maybe that the future requires not just creative people, but people across different professions to be a little versatile, to have a certain vision, to, as we've just looked at, perhaps a next order of understanding relationships between people between people and technology, between people and machines. And the future surely belongs to the kind of people who have a certain courage and are adaptive and agile to change. Tarun, this is one last question for you, and everybody else is free to join in. What is sort of the recommendation which, or your take on, for everybody, the audience in this hall, and also so many other people who are, sort of joining us online, is how do we prepare ourselves to be a little more future ready? Maybe within the studio, maybe studio client, or maybe how the other things happening around us are going to influence our future as practitioners of creative industry.
Sure. So I want to take a very macro to a micro approach. When I say macro, I think as an economy or as a country, we've of course gone through 75 years of independence, and we are celebrating that. But we've not really gone through major work-stopping calamities, whereas the whole of Europe, the whole of US, Russia, all these countries have gone through major catastrophes, and not that we've not, but then we've never had, or we've had SOPs, but we've never had implement those SOPs. So I can recall two of my meetings. One, we were sitting in Muscat in an oil refinery when the fire alarm rang, and in an instance, while we were thinking what to do, everybody was down, and we were staring at each other. What are we supposed to do? So even if it is not a catastrophe, there are SOPs in place and they are followed. Uh, 3 months later, we're sitting in Bombay in 8th floor, meeting a payments bank, MD, fire alarm rings. Everybody in the boardroom is sitting very calmly, and we are shivering and trying to run out of the studio, run out of the boardroom, wondering that, why isn't everybody moving? It's fire alarm. So we have SOPs in place, but we don't really care for them. What this COVID wave did was that, you have SOPs, you have to implement those SOPs. You have to be ready for change. You have to change. There is no other alternate. Whether this is for today, for tomorrow, for future, you don't know. You cannot skip it. You have to be with it. And while you are with it, you have to be, preparing for the future to have SOPs ready and to also implement those now. So I think today when somebody says lockdown, seeing India getting locked down on 23rd of March, you wouldn't be surprised if it's a lockdown tomorrow. You probably would be sitting at home. Delhi is already doing that. If pollution goes high, you have to work from home. It's becoming pretty normal. What this prepares us for a developing country like us is that having systems in place where a lot of businesses are taking advantage, or there's a loophole where a lot of new businesses can prop up. And all these new businesses can be propelled by designers. Designers are required everywhere. Wherever there is an opportunity, there are designers, because designers identify the opportunity. We are the problem solvers. We are the design thinkers who actually know what the problem is, know what the solution is. We know how to get it done. So I think from a macro to a micro perspective, this whole wave of COVID, not just the design industry has come to the forefront that we are the most, it is more critical to have designers in the forefront to solve problems, but not just problems of brands or problems of furniture or transportation, problems of the economy as well. So I think the time for designers have come to step in the forefront of this limelight and lead it from the front, rather than waiting and waiting for our numbers to come in. So I think I would want to end with that note from my side. I think this is a changing landscape. It is the landscape of opportunities, and I think designers are going to drive this wave. It depends on how you take this up. If you take it up, it's going to blossom into something wonderful, not just for the studio, but for the country, for the economy as a whole, while we are looking at being a developed country in the next 30, 40 years. So this is, I think design is going to propel that next 30, 40 years of us being developed nation.
Wonderful. I think he's put it very, very aptly that, there was a certain period where design was considered a service industry. जो client ने बोला है, हम वो बढ़िया से उनको provide करते थे. But perhaps the future is to move ahead of the wave, and as you were also talking about, help the client identify new opportunities, new ways of interactions and things like that. So I'm sure you guys also have some more questions for all four of these guys. Do look up on online. All of them are on Instagram, and they all have open accounts, so it's very easy to follow them up and DM them and continue these conversations. With that, we will conclude this particular round of conversations. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, and thank you each one of you guys.